Hey everyone, I'm back with the playthrough of Tobe Polystars, or Toby, who knows exactly how you say it. 1997 Konami M2 game. It's kind of the entire reason why I ended up buying all of this hardware in the first place. It was one of those games that I'd seen recordings of, seen a few photos of, and considering when I had my pre-order for the original M2 back in 1997 and it got canceled, I always wanted to check it out. Real basic story on this one while you watch the attract mode in the back. My Japanese is minimal, and by minimal I mean non-existent. But basically, the polygon planet got invaded by the pixel primitive polygons, and you are taking your planet back. That's basically the entire gist of the story. The guy in blue is Polly, and the guy in red is Stan. I played as Stan for this playthrough because I plugged the controller into port 2 on my super gun without noticing, and that's what you get. So what I'm going to do is let the track mode here play, and then you're going to just see the little intro video where the Polystars get sent out by the police chief to take their planet back. Just watch it, and I'll come back with the playthrough as soon as that's done. Okay, so you got the character selection screen here. Polly in blue, Stan in red. I went with the shot and missile on the same button playstyle. Since I was doing a capture of this, I figured I'd make it easier on myself. You're going to notice when I first start, I take a really early death. I was getting used to the 4-frame lag going into the capture device computer, which is really not useful for trying to play a shooter effectively. So, here's your first look at Polystars. Graphically, I don't think this is anything that the PlayStation 1 or the Nintendo 64 couldn't pull off. This board does have half the RAM that normal M2 boards do, at 4 megabytes versus 8, so maybe they were trying to save some money, or they didn't think they needed that extra RAM. There is that first death. I made it about 20 seconds in, and that's pretty bad. So, power-ups, you have a few. You got the 3-way shot, you have the Vulcan, and then you also have an aiming shot. That is, if you can power it up twice, going to be your most effective weapon for the game, because not only do you have 3 independent bullets, but you also have them tracking the enemies as they come into the screen. So, story-wise, you're going through Polytown here. You know, it looks pretty good. There's some pixelation for sure, but that is obviously because it's been blown up from 240p to 1080p. Some of the M2 boards have a medium resolution mode, but Polystars only operates in standard resolution, so you're really at a low res on this capture. But I mean, I think they did a really good job with the color. Everything looks pretty fun. It's not a great example of what the M2 could do, but as far as games, this is probably one of the best on the system. And there's another death, twice in the first level. It's pretty bad. These dump truck enemies are kind of fun. You can kind of see that there's a triangular polygon guy hopping up and down in the cab. You know, animation-wise, there's a lot of fun stuff to look at, but unfortunately, since everything is so small and moving quickly, you really have to play through multiple times to kind of get a look at everything going on. Here you're going to see a really bad example of that slowdown. It probably goes from 60 frames to 30 frames, and there's really only about 5 to 6 enemies on screen at once. I chalk that up to that minimal RAM, 4 megabytes, just being kind of an issue. It gets overloaded, but I really just use that as a presumption. So you start seeing some of those missiles shoot off and back. There is a lot of stuff going on in the game. There's always things happening. It really reminds me of the Twin Bees series, just kind of the colorfulness, the playful nature, and some really good music going on. And here is the first boss. It's like a flying dragon guy with some safety equipment on the back, maybe a bat. It's really hard to say. I sometimes think it looks kind of like a yellow pig as well, but I'll let you guys just watch the rest of the battle and kind of formulate your own opinions on what you are looking at. And I think you will notice here that I think I beat him without getting hit once. I finally kind of got my brain arranged around the lag and got kind of used to that. And he's dead. You can shoot those little rainbow circles that come at you, or you can avoid them, but they are destructible. And there you go, you're celebrating, and there's something going on in the background. Looks like the pig dragon died. So in stage 2, you get this fog effect. I don't think they're trying to hide the draw distance so much as they're using it kind of as an aesthetic choice. You see that same thing in Evil Knight in a steam room in the mansion, but it looks more like something that they were using for style and less something like a Silent Hill where they're trying to hide that draw distance in the back. Most of this level is aquatic themed, kind of like Darius, especially Darius Guide. You've got those big fish ships that come around, so maybe also a bit of inspiration in there. This goes on for a while, so I'll let you guys sit back and watch it. I don't think I take a death in this stage, but I can't remember. If I do, you'll just have to see. Kind of the interesting part of this level, I think, is basically that it's not a top-down shooter, and it's not a vertical shooter. There's definitely some depth in the stages. There's areas where you have to fly around things, but kind of the perspective where the bullets come from is kind of interesting and lends itself to being slightly different than a lot of games that were popular in '97. This ship is a pain to destroy. It takes a lot of shots, and you can actually end up not destroying it, and it just floats off into the distance. It's not necessary to blow it up. It's just kind of how it works. The weird thing is, here there really isn't any slowdown, so I'm not sure in that first stage if it's just like a programming issue, bad or not really optimized code, where this one here, everything runs very smoothly for the most part. You have, multiple ships on screen, a lot of bullets coming at you, and there is no slowdown whatsoever, so maybe that's just one of the situations. Oh, another death. And you can kind of see with that perspective thing, those power-ups that you can pick back up recede into the distance. And this is the giant Kraken boss. Well, took a death there again. It's a big squid, maybe it's the Kraken. There's a name, it's in Japanese, I can't read it. I'll have to ask somebody one day what his name really is. But kind of that fun perspective boss. He recedes into the background, pops back up. You have to fly around these tentacles to make sure they don't hit you, so it has a really good mix of like 2D and 3D elements to it. These pink, look like baby squids, will fly around and try to hit you for a while. But That's it. Inside is just a little triangular polygon, so I'm assuming it's a robot, not an actual Kraken. And that is stage 2. I like these little vignettes in the end, they're kind of funny. So stage 3 is one of my favorites. It's Dinosaur Land. You're going to see these box head dinosaurs kind of look like the characters from Cubivore. And you're going to get some Stegosaurus tanks that kind of just run around on the ground. They don't really act too much as enemies. There's more things to shoot at. And then you get these pink snake guys that the polygon men, guys, women, who knows, are riding around on. Fun little details are down there, waving the white flag, showing that they surrendered. There to the left is one of those little Stegosaurus tanks. He's got treads on him. It's decently important to get as many missiles as you can. It helps destroy the ground enemies much more than the shots do. The shots will sometimes seem to travel down and hit them, but the missiles are really kind of your go-to to take that secondary ground element down. The lava here will hurt you. You kind of have to move around and make sure that those sprites don't hit you, because they are going to take damage if they do. And there's another death right there. Kind of didn't see him coming in. So he made it to stage 3 without having to continue, so that's not terrible. Do get some slowdown here as well. I'm not sure if it's all the different sprites coming up on the screen or not, but it's really strange when you get the slowdown versus when you don't. Sometimes the screen's busy and you get slowdown. Other times the screen will be busy and you don't get slowdown. And this is another interesting part of the game where the enemies actually come in from behind the screen. You can kind of cheaply get hit if you don't see the enemy coming up. They usually give you maybe like a second or two to see the shadow of what's going on, but you will take a couple cheap deaths just from those enemies that come in behind you. But considering it is an arcade game and it's designed to take your quarters, of course you're going to be getting some things like that. Games a lot less cheap than Total Vice or Evil Knight. Those games are definite quarter munchers and sometimes can be extremely frustrating. I don't think it would be possible to one credit continue those compared to something like this where you definitely can beat on a credit if you practice. I haven't pulled it off yet, but maybe one day. More Stegosaurus guys. Dinosaurs. This stage is longer. It's kind of visually my favorite with the box dinosaurs and all the different tanks. It's got a lot of personality, but it does have a little bit of a lull in the middle here. Got a Love and Peace dinosaurs, kind of like a T-Rex guy. You're going to see him as the boss in a little bit, but there are just these boxes here, kind of giving you a little preview of what's going on. So, rumor has it that this game, along with the other 4 Konami arcade games, are going to be launch games or launch window for the M2. You can definitely see how this could be fun for a console release. So here you got Tyrannosaurus Boxing Rex, Love and Peace stamped all over him. Kind of hovers around, shoots at you. You're going to see that he also breathes fire, which I get totally nailed by, as well as, there it is, got nailed by it, as well as shoots his boxing gloves out with kind of like a rocket on the back. You got to circle him multiple times, kind of back into that perspective thing where the enemies will be behind you quite frequently. Not one of the harder bosses. I kind of just forgot he actually breathed fire at me for a while there. Like right there. He doesn't telegraph it a ton, so you can end up getting stuck even though you see it coming. His pattern does change depending on the difficulty. This is played at medium hard because at easy you don't get a lot of patterns from the bullets and the game can kind of be a little too boring to play. He does have some decent hit points. It takes a while to beat him. And you're going to see him come back up later in the game in a different form. Not sure if they just wanted to save some resources and reuse them or not, but the second form is more fun. And there you go. He blew up and left his boxes behind. And they built a sculpture out of him and they cut him apart with a hacksaw. That's basically the story you're getting there. I'm not sure what's going on. So stage 4 is all along a train track. It's got a lot of good elements to it. It's a super fun stage. You kind of get those flying dinosaur birds, except they come back in as sort of riveted metal birds. You can kind of see the rivets on them if you look by. So missiles in this stage play a huge component because most of the enemies that you're going to be fighting are going to be on ground level versus flying at you. Second continue. I mean, I guess if you're playing in an arcade and you put $1 in each, or $3 in, which isn't too bad. And if you kind of look at the walls and stuff, you see some of the M2's texture smoothing capabilities compared to something like the Saturn or the PlayStation 1, where you have all those textures that are going to kind of be pixelated. Kind of looks more similar to a Nintendo 64 game in that texture filtering. Like I said, I think you could totally pull this off on the Nintendo 64. You know, they said that the M2 was 2 to 3 times more powerful than the PlayStation 1, Saturn, and Nintendo 64. In some instances, I totally see that. In this one, not so much. But of course, this was like a first-generation game, and you kind of have to assume that, you know, Konami as a licensee of the hardware may not have had the best skill set at getting the power out of it. But it's super fun to look at all the same. You got these minecart guys shooting you from below. You gotta hit them with those missiles. Some more slowdown here. I'm not sure if the fire effects are doing that or what's going on. Picked up another missile. You usually get 50% of your missiles back on a death, so if you have 4, you're going to see 2 pop out. It's pretty generous at giving you some of your power-ups back on the first stage. It's not losing everything like some shooters are. These guys didn't get me this time, but they totally will. Since they're all flying from behind you, you have to go in front of them and kind of maneuver around because they will hit you from the back. And you'll see the importance of the missiles here. All those ground missile launchers can't get hit with your primary weapon, so a lot of shots going up but not a lot of hits. Not a lot to say about this here. Just going by, shooting enemies. A lot of things you can shoot for points that don't have any sort of function as enemies, as much as be a point scoring thing. Got a couple land dragons there, which really don't fit in the level whatsoever. They must have just had them as enemies and put them in. And here is the stage 4 boss, Giant Train. He probably has a name. I'm looking at the flyer, but it is in Japanese, so we're just going to call him Giant Train Dragon. Another super fun boss. This one really kind of plays with like that receding background element, and he'll come into the foreground. Shoot some lasers and missiles off at you, some bouncing bombs. Pretty easy to avoid. They start flashing before they explode, and it's pretty easy just to kind of get past them completely. Definitely say this is one of the easier bosses in the game. I think I beat him without taking a hit. There you have to go around him. If you stay in the foreground, you're going to die. Kind of throws these electrical balls out at you. They hit you. Basically, you take damage. They're just a giant, slow-moving projectile. You can see a couple of those polygon men running them. Basically, all the enemies are robots in this game. A lot of them that are being used as weaponry by the polygons. Or the pixel-perfect polygons. It's kind of a mouthful to say. Confused. I think this is bowling. I'm not sure why they're scoring it, but it's like a bowling chart, so guess the Polystars won. Stage 5 looks similar to Stage 1, kind of colorful, except it's in an island theme. You get all these big airships. Kind of look like they ripped off, you know, some of the Sonic colors. They kind of look like Dr. Eggman ships. That's just me, but, you know, Konami may have taken a little too much inspiration in some spots on this one. And here's an example of where you don't get that slowdown. Screen's filled, lots of enemies, lots of background things to look at, a big ship, plenty of bullets, and it's running perfectly at 60 frames a second. Didn't stop me from getting killed again, but that's why I think a lot of the slowdown is to coding and less to what the hardware is capable of, because this is a great example of when you have a lot of elements working, but you're not getting any slowdown from them. Great song on this stage. The soundtrack is awesome. I've been trying to find it for sale out of Japan. They released it as a double album with a Total Vice soundtrack. If you do see it, it's usually either new or near mint, and you're, looking at, I've seen anywhere from $250 to $600. Too much for me for a soundtrack. Maybe for a game, but that's expensive. Love to get it, but not today. So here I finally got that three-way aiming shot and directly lost it immediately, but it actually homes in on all the enemies. If you can get that from stage 1, it makes the entire game a lot easier. I would probably say you could one credit continue it if you get that aiming weapon and you kind of just play correctly. Clearly I didn't on this one. Not my best playthrough, but fun all the same. Got some aircraft carriers in the bottom. They're launching the ships up. They did a great job with the detail on this game. You see things coming from below. There was a lot of care taken in it compared to something like Total Vice, which, while a fun game, definitely seems like it was extremely lazily made. So I do give them a lot of credit over at Konami for making something this fun that also has a lot of thought and care put into it. But I really love this game. It was the entire reason I started collecting for M2. It took me 10 years to find a Polystars board. And then I found 2 in 2 weeks. So I guess luck was finally on my side. It took me forever to find one, and then I ended up with 2. That guy kind of looks like Roberto from Futurama. He's got that kind of same, I'm going to stab you look to him. I call him Roberto ship. I might be being weird, but that's what I'm seeing when I'm looking at it. So here is the box T-Rex enemy from stage 3, except now he's fully outfitted as a robot with gun turrets and a rocket engine. I'll let this song play a little bit. It's really fun to listen to. Took another hit there and a continue. So that's my third continue. So you'd be at $4 if you're playing this in the arcade. Start getting some really good bullet patterns on the bosses right around here. There's not a lot of patterns in the game. A lot of the shots and the actual stages are very random, but for the bosses moving forward, you do get a lot of like decent patterns. Nothing like a cave shoot or anything like that, but it becomes less random and a little bit more predictable. So if you play this on easy, you don't get those electrical bolts coming out. I've never seen them, but compared to the previous stage bosses, it does not take a lot of hits to kill Robot Dinosaur. That's what I'm calling him. And you're fishing with his head, because that makes a lot of sense. Alright, so we got the next to last stage here in some sort of underground amphitheater. Really not sure where we are. Must be deep in the earth, a Polygon planet. And here you get a lot of slowdown. It's almost unplayable, obviously it is, but you don't have a lot going on, and yet the slowdown occurs. So that's why I really do think it's all programming error. Get some sort of spider guys running around the floor. Not sure who they are, but they kind of look spider-like to me. This game also sometimes reminds me of the Bomberman games on Nintendo 64, Bomberman Hero. Some of the enemies, how they pop up and their overall look kind of just remind me of that. Also, just from a graphical standpoint, they kind of look similar. So in this area, you do get pixelation on texture work. In some parts of the game, it's filtered, and some it's not. I'm not sure if they didn't use it here to try to make the game run faster, because you do have more on screen in spots. Really just a question I don't have an answer to. I've never actually talked to anybody from Konami that made this game. I've tried to get in touch with them, but I haven't had any luck. So basically everything I say is just kind of a presumption of what I know and what I kind of assume. The boss to this area, though, quite fun. They put all these barriers up in front of you that you have to shoot to get by, but they really don't take many shots, so it's Not really a challenge on that one. Get a whole herd of the spider guys. Has some decent bullet avoidance there. It was really hard to do this whole playthrough with the lag going into my computer. Basically, every time you push the button to shoot, you had like a quarter-second delay. Movement was really hard. I would not recommend playing that way if you didn't have to. Get these funny headlight textures. They really don't illuminate anything. They're just in front of you. Kind of make the background look like it glows, but you'll see that you don't really get any of that light source off the wall. So it's not like an actual lighting element. It's just a couple transparent sprites that you get to look at. And then there's this guy, Muscle Polygon Man. Once again, name is in Japanese. Have no idea what it is. Should have looked that up. Didn't. But he's going to just fly around the screen and attack you. I'm not sure if it's 7 of them or if it's just one who keeps popping out of different boxes. I think it's one, but you make the call on that one yourself. He starts moving faster when you get him down to 4 areas to come out of, and starts, you know, making his couple of the shots. Got hit there, lost my aiming item, and that's another continue. I start really struggling from stage 6 on just because it starts getting a lot harder, so the lag is a lot more difficult to deal with. And that's it. He goes to the middle, shoots off some fireworks, and he is dead. And then you're friends with him, so apparently he wasn't too upset that you just killed him. And this is the last stage. That guy that you just saw received in the background is the main enemy. Have no idea what his name is. I don't think they wrote it. He's the leader of the Secret Association PPP, Pixel Primitive Polygons. That's what the flyer says. I'm looking at it right now. Not sure why they called him that. And here you go, no slowdown. You've got all these transparent cloud elements, you've got tons of enemies, tons of stuff in the background, and everything runs pretty smoothly. So, take that as you will. I think Konami was just kind of lazy with this one. It's really not surprising that the M2 got canceled as a home console, even if it was super disappointing to me back in '97. Once it got delayed to '98, you know, the Dreamcast was almost out, if not already out in Japan, and we got it on $99.99 in North America. It was much more powerful than this, so, you know, the M2 was kind of positioned, if it had released in '96 like it was intended to, it would have had a 3-year head start on something like the Dreamcast, but once it got past 1997, it would have been the most powerful console on the market for maybe 6 months in Japan, and maybe 14 to 16 months in North America, so can totally understand why they canceled it. That doesn't mean that I was super excited for it to get canceled, but it makes sense. I'm not sure why you'd spend $100 million to buy a technology and then not release it, but that's what happened. One more death there. I know there's a lot more coming. Those guys move super erratically around the screen. I have played this multiple times, and they do actually do different things as far as their movement's concerned, so it's kind of at random. There's a little RNG involved in that. So here we have the final boss. Forgot that he can hit you when he comes in there. It's a 2-stage boss. Most of the other bosses don't have a second phase, but this one definitely is going to. It's not a big second phase, but you will see it. Kind of shoots out those sprite fireballs while you're avoiding all these flying windmills that come through. That's what they look like. While you're in a tornado. Ship is down, and then this second stage starts. Not much to look at. It's got a lot of great bullet patterns, but it is just, you know, a couple blue polygon squares that come out, and then kind of like a hexahedron, quadrahedron. Not 100% sure on my geometry on these. Be like a D20, I think. I think that's what we're looking at here. So he shoots out these giant earthbound lightning bolts, and then you get 1 or 2 cycles of that, you know, pink fireball sort of laser coming out at you. Got hit there. The hitbox for your characters is pretty big. You know, it's not like the middle third of your character is what's going to get you killed. It really is almost like 50% of the entire model that's going to get you hit. Shoots out 2 phases of that one right there. You get some cool confetti effects coming off. I'm not sure if they're sprites or little polygons. Probably sprites, but it's kind of hard to tell on my screen. You have to deal with these annoying blue cubes while you have the fight. They don't take more than a couple shots to kill, but they do have some really interesting movement patterns. Just got hit there. And the 6th continue. So $7 to beat the game. I'd say that's a decent price if you were playing in an arcade. If you did better than I did, maybe you could bring it down to $3 or $4. Really did not have a good final fight. And he's dead. So here's stage 3. You can actually get hit and die here. It'd be really hard, but you will see that he shoots off a single bullet while he runs around. You kind of hit him. I have been hit by that bullet before, I will admit it. And he's dead. That is Tobe Polystars. Super fun game from '97. It took me, like I said, 10 years to find it. It's in my permanent collection now. And enjoy the ending. Pretty fun. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back soon with some more playthroughs of M2 games and hardware, talking about the technology. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for some more stuff. Enjoy the ending.